First century, Roman Empire. The Roman Empire solidified its control over the Mediterranean and much of Europe, emerging as the clear global superpower. Following the collapse of the Roman Republic, Augustus established imperial rule, becoming the first emperor. Under his leadership and those of successors like Tiberius and Nero, the empire enjoyed relative peace and internal stability, a period historians call the Pax Romana. Roman infrastructure flourished. Roads, aqueducts, and cities were built across its vast territories. The empire had a strong centralized administration, a powerful army, and economic integration across continents. Its dominance was not only military, but also cultural, with Latin and Roman law shaping the future of the West. Second century, Roman Empire. This century is often regarded as the peak of Roman power and prosperity. Emperors such as Trajan, Hadrian, Antoninus Pius, and Marcus Aurelius oversaw continued expansion, consolidation, and cultural flourishing. Under Trajan, the empire reached its greatest territorial extent, stretching from Britain to Mesopotamia. Hadrian focused on securing the borders, building fortifications like Hadrian's Wall in northern Britain. The economy thrived on trade and agriculture, and the legal system became more sophisticated. Roman citizenship began to expand beyond Italy, gradually integrating diverse populations into a shared imperial identity. Although the century ended with pressures from Germanic tribes and internal unrest, Rome still remained unmatched globally in influence and reach. Third century, Roman Empire. The Roman Empire entered a prolonged crisis marked by near-constant civil war, economic collapse, and invasions, a period known as the Crisis of the Third Century. Dozens of emperors ruled in rapid succession, many through military coups. External threats from Germanic tribes, Sassanid Persians, and others intensified. At one point, the empire fragmented into three competing states: the Roman Empire, the Gallic Empire, and the Palmyrene Empire. Yet it endured. Under Emperor Aurelian in the late 3rd century, the empire was reunified and some stability was restored. Despite these hardships, the Roman military remained formidable, and urban life persisted, though strained. The crisis exposed the need for deep structural reforms, setting the stage for transformation in the next century. 4th century, Roman Empire. The Roman Empire underwent major reforms that reshaped its character and prolonged its existence. Emperor Diocletian introduced the Tetrarchy, dividing the empire among 4 co-rulers to improve governance and military responsiveness. Constantine the Great emerged as the sole ruler by the 320s and implemented lasting changes. He founded a new capital at Byzantium, renamed Constantinople, shifting the empire's center of gravity eastward. Most significantly, he legalized Christianity through the Edict of Milan, setting the stage for its rise as the empire's dominant religion. By the end of the 4th century, under Theodosius I, Christianity became the state religion. While the Western Roman Empire faced increasing pressure from Germanic tribes, the Eastern Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire, grew stronger. Though transformation was underway, Rome was still widely viewed as the world's leading power. 5th century, Eastern Roman Empire. This century marked the dramatic fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 CE, after years of internal decay and repeated invasions by Germanic tribes like the Visigoths and Vandals. However, the Eastern Roman Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire, survived and even thrived. Centered in Constantinople, it retained Roman law, culture, and imperial structure, but became increasingly Greek in language and identity. Under emperors like Theodosius II and Leo I, the Byzantines defended their borders from both Western tribes and Persian threats. Despite significant losses in the West, The Eastern Empire remained a major economic and cultural center, preserving classical knowledge and serving as the most stable and advanced state in Europe and the Near East. 6th century, Byzantine Empire. The Byzantine Empire experienced a powerful resurgence under Emperor Justinian I, who aimed to restore the Roman Empire in the West. His generals, particularly Belisarius, reconquered parts of North Africa, Italy, and southern Spain. Justinian also codified Roman law in the monumental Corpus Juris Civilis, which would become the foundation of many modern legal systems. Constantinople flourished as a center of trade, wealth, and culture, exemplified by the construction of the Hagia Sophia, one of the most iconic buildings of the ancient world. Despite plagues, financial strains, and war with Persia, Byzantium in the 6th century was the most sophisticated state of its time, with a powerful bureaucracy and a strong sense of imperial continuity from Rome. 7th century, Rashidun and Umayyad Caliphates. The 7th century witnessed one of history's most astonishing geopolitical shifts: the rise of Islam and the rapid expansion of Arab Muslim power. The Rashidun Caliphate launched a series of remarkably successful military campaigns, defeating the Sassanid Persian Empire and taking large territories from Byzantium. The Umayyad Caliphate, which followed the Rashidun, expanded the Islamic Empire from Spain in the west to India in the east, creating the largest empire the world had yet seen by land area. Their military, religious, and administrative systems were sophisticated and tightly organized. Arabic replaced local languages in governance, and Islam became a unifying cultural and religious force. Although the Byzantines survived in the east, the Islamic Caliphate was the century's dominant rising superpower. 8th century, Umayyad and early Abbasid Caliphate. At the beginning of the 8th century, the Umayyad Caliphate continued its vast territorial rule, but internal divisions and resentment over hereditary rule led to its overthrow in 750 CE. The Abbasid Caliphate succeeded it, moving the capital to Baghdad, which became a center of learning, science, and culture. The Abbasids initially maintained a vast empire and a strong centralized government. While they lost some military dominance compared to the Umayyads, they fostered a golden age of Islamic civilization. During this century, the Islamic world was intellectually and economically advanced beyond any other region, surpassing the Byzantines and Chinese in global influence. 9th century, Abbasid Caliphate. The Abbasid Caliphate reached the peak of its cultural and intellectual influence in the 9th century. Centered in Baghdad, the Abbasids oversaw an era known as the Islamic Golden Age, characterized by major advancements in science, medicine, astronomy, mathematics, philosophy, and literature. Economically, the Abbasids controlled key trade routes connecting Asia, Africa, and Europe, making Baghdad one of the richest and most cosmopolitan cities in the world. Although politically, the Caliphate began to decentralize, losing some control to regional governors and emerging dynasties, it remained the cultural and intellectual heart of the known world, exerting wide influence across continents. 10th century, Song Dynasty. In China, the Song dynasty was founded in the latter part of the 10th century and quickly established itself as the world's most advanced society. The Song state featured a strong, centralized bureaucracy chosen by merit through civil service exams. Its economy was remarkably sophisticated, with paper money, large-scale iron production, and innovations in agriculture and commerce. Urbanization grew rapidly, and cities like Kaifeng became bustling centers of trade and culture. Though the Islamic world still wielded great influence, the Song dynasty surpassed other powers in technological development, literacy, and economic output. While militarily weaker than some nomadic neighbors, the Song's internal sophistication and productivity made it the superpower of this century. 11th century. Song Dynasty. The Song dynasty continued its dominance into the 11th century, maintaining a high level of cultural, technological, and economic achievement. This era saw major innovations such as movable type printing, advances in mathematics and astronomy, and the early use of gunpowder for military applications. The economy was monetized and highly productive, with extensive trade networks within and beyond China. Although the Song faced military pressure from the Liao and Western Xia states, they maintained their southern heartland and continued to be the most advanced civilization in the world in terms of literacy, technology, and governance. The Islamic world remained powerful, but the Song's societal complexity and innovation gave it the edge as the dominant power. 12th century. Song dynasty. The southern Song dynasty, after losing northern China to the Jurchen-led Jin dynasty, re-established itself in the south and maintained its economic and cultural dominance. The dynasty continued to excel in commerce, urban development, maritime trade, and technological innovation, including further development of naval technology and cartography. The port of Quanzhou became one of the busiest in the world. Philosophically, Neo-Confucianism took root and shaped Chinese thought for centuries. Despite military constraints and territorial losses, the Southern Song dynasty remained the world's most advanced society in terms of economy, administration, and intellectual life, making it the superpower of the 12th century. 13th century. Mongol Empire. The Mongol Empire, founded by Genghis Khan in 1206, rose from the steppes of Central Asia to become the largest contiguous land empire in history. Through a series of brilliant and brutal military campaigns, the Mongols conquered China, Persia, the Islamic heartlands, Central Asia, and much of Eastern Europe. Under successors like Ogadai and Kublai Khan, the empire reached from the Pacific Ocean to the fringes of Europe. Despite their nomadic origins, the Mongols were exceptional empire builders who promoted trade, religious tolerance, and administrative efficiency. The Pax Mongolica enabled secure trade across the Silk Road, linking East and West more closely than ever before. The Mongol world order defined the 13th century in both scale and global impact. 14th century. Yuan dynasty. The Yuan dynasty, established by Kublai Khan, represented the Mongol continuation of power in China and the East. Although the Mongol Empire had fractured into independent khanates, the Yuan ruled a united China and remained the wealthiest and most populous center of Mongol rule. Kublai Khan's court in Dadu, modern Beijing, was a cosmopolitan hub, welcoming travelers like Marco Polo and fostering exchange between Asia and Europe. However, the dynasty struggled with internal rebellion, natural disasters, and administrative challenges, particularly due to cultural gaps between Mongol rulers and the Chinese population. Even as decline set in by the late 14th century, the Yuan still symbolized the enduring power of the Mongol world. By century's end, they were overthrown by the Ming dynasty, which began a new native rule in China. 15th century. Ming dynasty. The Ming dynasty restored Han Chinese rule after the fall of the Yuan and quickly became the dominant global power. The early Ming emperors, particularly Yongle, centralized control, revived the civil service system, and invested heavily in infrastructure, including the rebuilding of the Great Wall and construction of the Forbidden City. The Ming economy thrived on agriculture, porcelain production, and international trade. Perhaps most famously, Admiral Zheng He led massive naval expeditions across the Indian Ocean, reaching Southeast Asia, South Asia, the Middle East, and East Africa, showcasing Ming wealth and naval strength. These voyages reflected the Ming's ambition to assert influence abroad without colonial conquest. With a vast population, cultural brilliance, and the most powerful fleet of the time, the Ming dynasty stood as the 15th century's superpower. 16th century, Spanish Empire. The Spanish Empire emerged as the dominant global power following the voyages of Christopher Columbus in 1492 and the subsequent colonization of the Americas. During this century, Spain built the first truly global empire, stretching across Europe, the Americas, parts of Africa, and Asia, notably the Philippines. Fueled by silver and gold from colonies in Mexico and Peru, Spain became the wealthiest and most powerful European state. Under monarchs like Charles V and Philip II, it exerted influence not just through military force, but also through its Catholic mission and maritime dominance. Spanish galleons ruled the seas, and its conquests reshaped global trade, demographics, and cultures. Despite challenges from rivals like the Ottomans and the Portuguese, no empire matched Spain's global reach and wealth during this century. 17th century, Dutch Republic. The Dutch Republic rose to prominence in the 17th century, known as the Dutch Golden Age. Although relatively small in size, the Dutch built a commercial and naval empire with disproportionate global influence. Their control of maritime trade routes and colonies, ranging from the East Indies, Indonesia, to the Caribbean and parts of South America, made them the financial center of the world. Amsterdam became the hub of global trade and finance, supported by the Dutch East India Company, VOC, the world's first multinational corporation and one of the most powerful commercial entities in history. Dutch advances in shipbuilding, banking, and capitalism allowed them to dominate world trade, even surpassing the Spanish and Portuguese in certain regions. Culturally, the Netherlands also flourished in science, philosophy, and the arts. 18th century, British Empire. By the 18th century, the British Empire had surpassed its European rivals to become the most powerful global force. This rise was fueled by victories over France in the 7 Years' War, which secured British dominance in India, Canada, and various strategic colonies. Britain's growing industrial capacity, financial institutions, and powerful navy gave it enormous global leverage. The British East India Company became the main vehicle for empire building in Asia, particularly in the Indian subcontinent. While Britain faced internal challenges like the American Revolution near the century's end, it emerged from the 18th century with the foundation of what would soon be the largest empire in history. London was becoming the new center of global trade, politics, and innovation. 19th century, British Empire. The British Empire reached the height of its power in the 19th century, becoming the largest empire in history, spanning every inhabited continent. Britain's unmatched naval strength allowed it to control global trade routes, while the Industrial Revolution, which began in Britain, gave it a technological and economic edge. The empire's colonies supplied raw materials and served as markets for British manufactured goods, fueling further growth. Key holdings included India, much of Africa, Australia, Canada, and numerous Caribbean and Asian territories. British influence extended not only through military and economic power, but also through language, legal systems, infrastructure, and cultural exports. The phrase, "the sun never sets on the British Empire," captured its vast global presence. By the end of the century, Britain was the undisputed global hegemon, although rising powers like Germany and the United States were beginning to challenge its dominance. 20th century, United States. The United States rose from a regional power to the world's leading superpower over the course of the 20th century. After emerging victorious in both world wars, the U.S. became the principal architect of the new global order, leading in military strength, technological innovation, and economic output. During the Cold War, it stood as one of two superpowers alongside the Soviet Union, but after the Soviet collapse in 1991, it remained the sole global superpower. U.S. influence extended across the globe through alliances, e.g., NATO, multinational corporations, Hollywood, digital technology, and institutions like the United Nations and the World Bank. The U.S. also led in space exploration, scientific research, and cultural soft power. Its combination of military might, economic scale, and global reach made it the dominant force of the 20th century. 21st century, United States. The United States continues to be the world's foremost power in the early 21st century, though its dominance is increasingly challenged by the rapid rise of China. The U.S. maintains the world's most advanced military, a leading role in global finance and technology, and enormous cultural influence through media, education, and innovation. However, the global landscape is shifting toward multipolarity, with China asserting itself economically and geopolitically, especially through initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative. Still, the U.S. remains central to global diplomacy, economic governance, and strategic alliances. Whether it retains unchallenged superpower status through the rest of the century remains an open question, but for now, it remains the most powerful single actor on the world stage.